developmental project. So what ended up being called Career Steps, we went through a bunch of different names before that, but Career Steps is the final name, was really started by an alumnus, a later successful history graduate, who I think it was about 50 grand he put up to the humanities department and said he wanted to improve the career preparation of humanities majors, mainly history and philosophy grads. And a committee was formed, Chuck Connell was the head, and a bunch of other people. They asked me to join because of the professionalism work I'd done. And we were going through all these meetings, and they kept saying, we have this money, we should improve students' career preparation. And they kept thinking, more workshops and more seminars. And part of my role was to think about, well, what does the Gateway Center do? What does our CDO do as a point of comparison? And I didn't think there was any shortage of workshops and seminars. I did a focus group of students. All I had to do was offer free pizza, and tons showed up and told us, yeah, we know there's things out there, but it's really hard to get them on our schedule, and all kinds of reasons why. I didn't think workshops and seminars were going to do it, nor were they going to scale very well. I made it clear to the others that, you might get the first 30 students, and maybe even 30 more in a second workshop or something, but those are the students who are going to be most on the ball anyway. And getting the full 300 or 600, whatever their set was going to be more than 10 times or 20 times more difficult. So we needed something that was scalable and flexible, and of course worked with a low amount of administrator or faculty effort once it was running. And more and more scientists pointed to it being some sort of online course, with the objective being career preparation. We decided to settle on juniors, at least initially, because that seems like when it's 2 years to 18 months out, you can really get their attention, but you don't freak them out too much. And if you wait too long, well, sure, it's even more important to them, and it might be too late in many ways. So we decided, at least as a starting point, that's the best. Maybe there should also be a sophomore version, maybe also a senior version, but at least as the first version, aiming at juniors was the decision. And this concept of aiming at the middle majority, again, those best and most initiative-taking students are not really the ones that need this the most. They're going to land on their feet somehow. And frankly, the least initiative-taking students, even if they're asked to do this, compelled to do it somehow, we might not be able to help them so much. But it's that huge middle majority. I would say half to 3/4 of our students just don't get exposed to stuff like this. So, like all good courses, it just provides a logical progression instead of miscellaneous workshops and sessions at Gateway or wherever that students wouldn't even avail themselves of anyway. So, actually at that point, it was increasingly clear they were going to ask me to do it. I did a bunch of research that showed no other university, and certainly no for-profit, like consulting or course building outfit, made this kind of thing available. I wish they had. They didn't, and so it was looking like they were going to ask me to do it, and I went to Craig and said, please protect me from this duty of doing this over the summer. And instead, Craig sweetened the pot and said, no, I want you to do it, and I want FCB to have it too, if not really own it. And irrespective of the pot being sweetened, one does not turn down one's boss the year before tenure.
The pot was relatively sweet.
It was okay, yeah. It was basically a month's pay for about 6 weeks' work, which I'm not sure actually doesn't work out that well, but it wasn't so bad. It was fairly flexible. It was kind of enjoyable. Oh, I should have said that.
Yeah.
But it'll have to double if I'm going to work any more on it this summer. How about that? I'll leave it at that. Okay,
You're
so.
sure about that because you know when the recommendation goes.
Yeah, too. Okay. Oh no, I'll do it for free, please. Flog me. Okay, so 15. We obviously settled on it being basically like a 1 credit hour class. It takes 1 hour a week. Developed it over the summer, mainly in July and August. Alpha tested, if that is even a concept, with a very voluntary ad hoc set of students. It turned out only about a handful, 6 maybe, went all the way through the semester, and they didn't even really do everything, but it did help us refine how we're going to administrate it and prove that there weren't too many glitches or typos or stuff like that. So it was good to have those people do that. But this semester, there's a controlled study. I'll say more about that in a second. that should give it a proper test, and we should have real rigorous data to prove whether or not this thing is doing any good. So about an effort, 1 hour effort a week, and the target all along has been that it ought not take more than about 5 hours per week of an administrator, and in this case it's a student worker under Wendy's direction in the CDO, per 100 students, so that shows that it's quite scalable. I don't think we're at that point yet, but we ought to be once it's more mature. We still believe that's possible. Questions so far? So the elevator pitch is, if they spend 1 hour of effort per week over 15 weeks as rising juniors, that's going to be about 14 more hours that semester that they're going to think about career growth than they would have otherwise. And even if this thing is grossly suboptimal, that can't help but be an improvement in how well they're going to execute as seniors and hit the ground running upon graduation. So we don't need to go into these in depth unless you'd like to ask about them. The first one is just how to use this course, and it includes the pre-course survey, a fairly extensive survey that's part of the research effort behind this. And then they build a LinkedIn profile in step 2, and they continue to use their LinkedIn profile and other LinkedIn resources throughout. College specific, so that's for our students, of course, the CDO. For humanities students, it dials them into the gateway stuff and some additional things that the Cal does. I'll show you an example of number 4, workplace cultures. So here's what it looks like for real. Of course, the student only sees each step appear one at a time. I see all 15. They see them appear as they complete the prior one, the next one appears. This is the inside of step number 4, workplace cultures. And here's an exercise I actually put my strategic management students through, where they think about what sort of culture, workplace culture, are they going to fit that? A mechanistic organization or an organic organization? So let me make that a little bigger for you. And since students could be in any kind of profession, for example, this needed to work for humanities students at first, one of the chief career paths of which is to be a lawyer. The exercise asks students to go find 3 job opening application material postings. There we go. And in any industry, even in law firms, there's going to be a relatively mechanistic one, relatively organic one, and one in the middle, all the way to software development companies. If you compare them side by side, and that's the assignment, that they think that through, they do a little bit of reading, they think that through, they journal about it, they get on a discussion board about it, and then they complete a quiz that also has survey questions embedded in it. And that's meant to take about an hour, and I think that part has proven true, that students spend about an hour a week if they do all the things properly. Questions about that, or any of the other segments at this point? I'll show you the balance of them goes through experience development, resume development, tailoring the applications is really about cover letters. Thank you, Mary, for the extensive help she offered on that segment in particular, and editing the whole set of curriculum last summer. Managing your online brand was based largely on Bev Ammer's book and work, and so I got a lot of excellent help from people along the way, and collaborated with people at the Gateway Center and many other places all the way along. Questions so far?
Tim? So there's a quiz at the end of each of these?
Each one, so that's right here. So in each one of them, there's an introduction that's meant to take about 5 minutes to read, an exercise like it described for that one that takes something close to 30 minutes. Journaling, you never know, and it's kind of a pass-fail journal, and the student worker administrates it, goes through it, and just sort of makes sure it's legit, but doesn't do any qualitative grading. You've either done the journal or you haven't. And all the way throughout, I should mention, there's constant reinforcement that this is for intrinsic benefit. Unlike most classes, they're not getting a grade at the end or something like that. It's not for extrinsic benefit. You've got to be sold on the concept that this will do them good to do it for real. Now, if some fraction of students, and I guess it's less than 10%, just don't get that message, we're going to focus on the good part for the 90%. That's really sort of the philosophy that went into it. You could knock yourself out trying to get that last 10% to do everything else, but I'd much rather give a bunch of false positives than deprive than false negatives, deprive the people of really doing it from getting a chance to do it. So discussion board activity, and then that survey quiz only takes about 5 minutes. Yeah. Okay.
So do you just tally the frequency of participation in discussion board?
Well, originally, and this had to be adapted, and we're going to probably tweak this summer. Originally, they're required to do at least 3 postings, and then they rate each other's postings. I do this in my own class, and the only postings that count are postings that are rated 3 stars or more. You know how students can rate on a 5-star scale all their peers' postings anonymously. Only those postings that are 3, 4, or 5 stars count toward their 3. So if they write gibberish, then their peers will not score them very high. So it's a market-based mechanism where the market self-regulates. It's how it works under the increased supervision that I give it in my classes, but that hasn't quite worked so far, at least while with the student worker who doesn't really want to go in there and do the ratings and shouldn't be responsible for qualitative stuff. I think we can improve the rigor of that to make it work better. It's all meant to self-regulate, so it takes less admin time and more burden is put on the students. Yeah. Wow.
Is there anything in there, the course, that is specific to NAU and Jobs for Jacks registration?
Oh, absolutely. I should have mentioned that really so LinkedIn and Jobs for Jacks are the 2 parts of that first, step number 2. Yeah, Jobs for Jacks, and then there's heavy use of the local college-specific resources, we call it. We introduce them in step 3, and throughout the rest of it, there's all kinds of reminders to make use of them. Now, there are all kinds of seminars and workshops that do come up, but they might not correlate exactly with the right week, and so there are reminders that make students realize, oh, even though I'll already have done my resume, during week 12 there's this other resume session, and it provides an added connection that we believe will increase the utilization of all those seminars and workshops, Gateway and CDOs alike. Thanks for that. Yes?
We would get step 5 too.
Step 5, sure. My personal favorite. I can't remember what's in it, to tell you the truth, so we'll find out. Oh, link broken.
Don't do that to me.
Yeah. Okay. So a suitable college degree is a solid start, but aside from that, what else are employers looking for? Think about these kinds of things. Lots of things. Work experience, but really employers are deeply concerned about these things. In fact, most employers are perceiving the professionalism of young people these days to be trending downward. What kinds of things do they report as seen, or work ethic, all these kinds of things. It's easier to stipulate what professionalism is not than what it is, so we start there. But then they go on to a number of articles, I think it's just 2 still, that explain the issue in more detail. If they haven't quite figured out what it is they want to do, we have them just pick from this list of business categories. It's very general, but at least pick something, start somewhere, and when you pick your, that's step 4, when you pick your 3 employers, so this is a similar format to the last one, where they go and they pick 3 job postings, or companies, not postings, but companies, 3 example companies they might want to work for, and try to explore from their postings and any other materials on their About Us pages, what kind of place that is, what sort of things do they care about other than just standard technical skills? Do they hint at particular elements of decorum or collegiality or something, just to start thinking about it? Then journal about it, and then discuss it, and then take a survey about it. Is that what you're looking for?
Maybe I missed it. Do you have anything on professional appearance?
It's part of that, but in some of the other research I've done, where we have 7 categories of things that comprise professionalism, absolutely every survey I've done, about half a dozen of them, so an N of several hundred by now, employers put attire on the bottom, or the whole category of appearance, actually. It isn't to say it's unimportant, but when they compare it against integrity, conscientiousness, responsibility, proactiveness, and these other categories, it comes out on the bottom. So my concern has always been about focusing too much on attire anytime the word professionalism arises, people immediately think dress. I think behavioral stuff, and I try to steer it toward that. But we could do more with that, and there's certainly, like Ron's on that video that's on the CDO site about how to dress for success. So there's a lot of material available about that, but the really qualitative and frankly, in my opinion, more important stuff is what I tried to focus on here. But that can be adapted.
So one of the design features of this is to make it adaptable. So for example, in the hotel industry, especially as you move up the scale towards higher end property, appearance right down to grooming is critically important. In fact, I got sent home 4 straight weekends in a row I did because my hair was too long. You know, so it really is critical there. You know, in a lot of information technology firms, completely different things. So the design of this, we can have the core, and then maybe over at HRM, we want to add something in there about appearance. You know, and really right down to grooming, being able to shave properly, and all that kind of stuff.
In fact, I mean, make that edit to the slide that you're going to see next. There are lots of different versions. We're real-time, Roger. It's meant to be adaptable, and I'll get to that point in just a second. So each next step opens up when the quiz is completed and when the other deliverables are delivered, though that's been fudged a little bit this semester, and another week elapses. So even if you work fast, you can't move ahead because we want the cohorts to be timed together. To the extent that the discussion board serves as a self-regulating mechanism, the little market of postings, people have to be on the same week at the same time, otherwise the first person there will have nobody to discuss anything with. Now that may change too. There's been talk of making it possible that it be asynchronous, that students can do it at their own pace anytime they want. Well, sure, there are merits to that. You lose that quality, but you gain other qualities, and that's the kind of thing that is constantly up for discussion and adaptation.
So that's the piece. If they don't know, if they don't know what piece they've completed. Like, did I miss the journaling, the discussion board? Did I miss the quiz? What am I
Right,
missing?
or is it just timing? Right. So apparently
or is
some
it
students
timing,
don't.
which is tricky.
Some students don't understand why their next step hasn't opened,
Right.
and we can improve probably this summer, some sort of checklist or better explanation of what part hasn't been done yet, or maybe it's just a timing function that hasn't kicked in yet, something like that.
So essentially, if the student is quite behind, they really are dropped out, it kind of sounds like.
Well, so that's another gray area. We don't want to just boot a student just because but maybe at some point the line has to be drawn. All that takes more effort, and it's qualitative, so I believe it takes faculty effort. It shouldn't be on the student workers' burden at that point. Maybe the student should be burdened or booted. On the other hand, I'd love to think they can still catch up.
Yeah.
And even if they're coming along weeks late, and so long as they still read the postings and make a few of their own, I guess other students can't read them. Well, once again, I'd rather get the 90% or so that are going to do it right and get something out of it than worry about that 10%. Or maybe it's 20 out of it. So that's the screenshot again.
Tim, can I make one other point? I would think about this as a very advanced prototype. So I don't know what this will look like in 2016, but it's going to be different from this.
Yeah.
So we've taken kind of an iterative design approach to this, where let's get something, let's roll it out to a certain group, and then roll it out to another group, and let's adapt, and then we'll continuously improve this. And it may branch at some point where we've got one that's very strict and goes along with classes, and you have to do it in a certain time frame, and then there's maybe another one that students can do on their own in whatever time frame they want to do.
Yep. And it will look different. Thanks for pointing that out, Craig. It is what it is, largely as a function of my background as a product development guy, a number of entrepreneurial companies. We got it done in a matter of a couple of months this summer. If we tried to fully bake something, it would have taken years, and then, how many meetings and all kinds of stuff. The model for this is much more ground up. Go ahead and break it. Let's just throw something out there, see what happens. That's, I think, the way of innovation that has a much better path forward than trying to get it all completed before you can start. That's a philosophical view. I get a lot of nods. I think the people who wouldn't nod along with that And of course, I need to, want to, and the whole, undercurrent of the intention was to research this. Heidi Wayman, the chair of the psychology department, is my co-researcher on that. The basic hypothesis is, does this course correlate with a rise in students' career confidence? It'd be awesome if we could even show causation, but we can at least show correlation. And career confidence is a complex construct which we've asked, we explore with a whole bunch of different questions. And then she wanted to do all sorts of related study of students' so-called adult identity, the extent to which they see themselves as responsible for doing all this stuff, and how their self-efficacy, how likely they are to be proactive and get started on this kind of thing. Anyway, we expect even students with high adult identity to benefit from this, but probably more, well, actually, I can see it going both. We're just going to explore it, whether it's more or less than students with low self-identity or adult identity. We shall find out.
And that's, I guess, how we adapt it.
True enough, yeah.
Figure out how to, because it is not important results.
Exactly, yeah, and we might find, therefore, certain things work better and should go into the sophomore version if we ever create one. Other things are better suited to a senior level version or adult, returning students, military vet students, that kind of thing. So, this semester, thanks to Margaret, who will speak next about how she's doing it, we have 90-some students that are getting the treatment. They're being modestly incentivized to actually do the thing, and we still have 90-some that are moving through it, and will probably complete it. And then the approximately same number of students in Brian Gregory's same classes, so homogeneous sets of juniors, pretty good control group, are not enrolled, but they are doing the pre and the post survey just the same. Theirs is on paper versus in the system, but it's all the same questions. And then we will test that. Now, the students who are in it also have in the survey/quiz at the end of every step is half quiz questions and half survey questions that are going to help us gauge which ones were the best of the modules and which ones least, and sort of see if we can see the trajectory of their enthusiasm about this thing over the semester and make any refinements based on that. So that is happening, and Heidi and I have intentions to get a paper out by the end of the summer based on the data we'll have taped by May. And then there's all kinds of future potential for this thing. The effectiveness, obviously, as it gets more and more used, we can continue to do this kind of study, though I think once we realize that it's really good, it'd be nice if all management 300 students were taking it for their own benefit. But that's a bigger topic than mine, than me. That's what my pay grade. But however the course derives and however it's deployed, we can compare and contrast. Certainly we can compare FCB to the humanities students. Some are doing it now, but they've chosen a model that's more like asking for volunteers to do it, which is not a random sample of their students, and it's only about 25. And so not enough yet, but if we get more HRM students, compare and contrast regular business majors against them. The military vet version is probably going forward. Lori and Colonel Griffin and their people are going through it, studying it, making notes of how they would want to adapt it to suit the particular needs of military vets. And so we'll probably have a branch version next fall for them. The core will be the same. Every semester the intention is to sort of refine the core and then branch it out in various ways. That's another kind of difficult thing. I mean, who's responsible for that? Should Ron's group be responsible for looking after the branch version that goes off to psychology and humanities? I certainly don't want to do that. I don't know if Ron does. So we get to work some stuff like that out. But at least for the folks that we have direct influence over, we can make branch versions that work. And then possibly someday there can be a sophomore and or senior version. I think that's the end of my part. Any questions about my part before I hand it over to Margaret? Okay.
If you plan on continuing doing the control study in the future, I would suggest that if you can twist Brian's arm and have him adopt the course, then both he and Margaret can do one session with the career step, the other without. the advantage of that is control for the instructor effect, which is what many
True
people
enough.
will argue.
And we talked about that last semester, maybe Margaret will say more about it, but it would be hard for an instructor to have certain kind of content in one section and not in the other. It'd be very hard not to spill over with, oh, did I mention that yet? Oh, wait, that's the other section. You know, it'd just be really
Well,
difficult to
it will be hard if the instructor hasn't already have an existing version. You know, that's what Jim Pinto and I did like 10 years ago when we actually did a restructuring of Eco 201, because he has been teaching it the traditional way, and then we have a new approach. And I don't do the traditional way, so I don't have a control group
I got
on
you.
that aspect, but he did. He actually spent 1 year doing both versions.
I understand, and I understand completely what you're saying about the instructor effect. Margaret might just talk more about career stuff anyway, and so our students would rise in career preparedness anyway, what are we calling it? Career confidence anyway, so I recognize that. But as you pointed out, I would have to twist Brian Gregory's arm. I had to twist Margaret's. Luckily, she's a very innovative and receptive person. But, yeah, or, yeah, she just says, bring it on, which is awesome. But it's all on a voluntary basis, and that's really the subject of Craig's part later. I don't want to twist anybody's arm. Brian happens to be the chair of the P&T committee next fall, and the last thing I'm going to do is twist his arm. So if it depends on somebody twisting somebody's arm, it ain't going to be me. Not for a while yet. I'll run it, I'll develop it, I'll study it, but that's above my pay grade.
Tim, I think it's important for people to realize that, at least for the college, this is primarily about the professional and career development of our students. And the research is a secondary, it's an important benefit,
Yes.
it's a secondary benefit.
Yeah.
So Tim's handcuffed a little bit. There's a way that maybe would be better from a research standpoint, but not as good. Like if it would have been, let's have 45 of the students do this and 45 not.
Yeah.
But that's not what the goal of this was. And so I don't want anybody to get the impression that Tim doesn't understand some of these things. This is really all about student development. And if it can advance some research agendas, that's great.
Excellent point. Thanks for adding that. Let me point out the results of the research should actually help advance this thing quite a bit. If it ever were to come before some sort of curriculum committee type decision, having the data that shows that it actually does improve student career confidence, even considering or not controlling for instructor effects, would be a heck of a lot more than no data at all, and probably a precursor to it ever being advanced in a more general way. So, thanks. I'll hand it on to Margaret, and we'll continue.